Love it. Hey everyone, I'm Emily, a birth doula and hypnobirthing educator with Radiant Birth and Wellness, and today we are here with Stephanie, a wonderful mother and former hypnobirthing student, to share today with her birth story with us. So Stephanie, would you mind just giving a short or overview of your beautiful birth experience? We do have the written version of it too, so people can read that afterwards.
Yeah, my birth was quick, I think, not by some standards, but from what I was expecting. And my baby also came early, so I had him at 36 weeks. And fortunately, there was no like complications. We didn't have to spend any time in the NICU or anything like that, so it wasn't like a scary, he's a preemie. But I just went into labor spontaneously, and I tell everybody he just like pushed eject and shot out. He was just ready. So at 36 weeks, I just started having contractions. They came on very fast. And I labored at home for as long as I could. I'd taken the hypnobirthing classes. So that was kind of our goal, was to stay at home as long as possible. And really wait until it was like time to go in. And then I think kind of ironically, my husband like had a hard time getting me in the car too. So I just didn't want to get in the car. And so we labored at home for even longer. But it was nice because then by the time I got to the hospital, I was 5 centimeters dilated. And the baby did all the work. It really was kind of just a mind over matter situation where I just got really quiet and um, kind of breathed through it and repeated my mantras, played the hypnobirthing playlist. I took a bath for a long period, and that was very nice. And then pushed for just under an hour, and he arrived and popped out. So that's kind of the very high level. I wanted to go natural, and I did. At no point did I think that I couldn't. So that was nice because I had heard, towards the end, you'll think like, oh, I can't do this. And I never had that feeling. It was always just kind of like, it's happening, and you just let it happen. Just don't fight it would be my best advice, I think. And then I caught him myself because he shot out so fast that the doctor was not in the room and the nurses didn't have gloves on, which you would think after an hour of pushing they would have been more prepared
Gloved
for
up for
delivery.
that.
But yeah, it's fun because in all the pictures, it's like one nurse that just has a glove like half on, like no fingers in the glove, just like trying to help. And then you can see my doctor like walking into the room behind me as I'm like holding my baby, and I'm like, you can just leave. We already did it. So yeah, that's kind of the high level, if you've got the written version, but open to
Yeah,
any
no,
questions.
I appreciate you sharing that too. And one of the things I just kind of giggle at and I still think is hilarious, just that your husband was like coaxing you out of the house.
Yeah.
Um, I sometimes will share with families that like working as a birth doula can feel like maybe herding cats or like working with someone who's under the influence just because there's like two steps forward, one step back kind of feeling.
Yes. And
Um,
he said that too, because I think we heard that in your class where you were like, sometimes people liken like a laboring woman's behavior to like somebody that's drunk. And he said, he was like, that was accurate. Like you were inebriated. And I think that that is very accurate. So partners out there, labor partners, prepare for your birthing person to be uh, drunk.
yeah, and even there's a couple of different ways that we kind of like call that feeling or that sensation. Like a lot of people will refer to it as laborland. In hypnobirthing, sometimes we call it this amnesic state. I think you were saying for the most part you were super internal or just kind of quiet. And
Mhm.
so can you like speak a little bit more to that and what that felt like for you?
Yeah, and I think And I don't want to like give the impression that I like wasn't making noise because there was noises happening. But yeah, I thought like I brought headphones, I was gonna listen to music, like I thought it was gonna be a more like, walking around and swaying situation. And it was just like motionless, me with my internal thoughts, doing an occasional like ooh. So um I think, and there definitely was that kind of like amnesia stage that I wrote about in my story when the nurse said, you can't push, it's going to be bad if you push. And then went from that to like my next memory is her being like, yeah, I've checked you twice, you can push. And I was like, oh, I don't have any recollection of that. So it's definitely you enter like a weird space-time continuum where um, you don't know how much time has passed, nor do you really care or think about it. Um, I intentionally like had them close the blinds because when I got out of the bath, I could see that the sun had started to go down. And in my mind, I was like, oh, that means it's like early evening, afternoon. And I didn't want that kind of outside input. I was just in my bubble of like, whatever is happening is happening. And I didn't want my rational brain to be like, oh, this means that it's been all day now. And so I was like, close the blinds, turn off all of the, like, turn the clock around. Like, I didn't want any kind of outside input. Um, and so yeah, I think it was kind of just I had found my little Zen space of like, I know when a contraction's coming on, I know that I can breathe through it, I know that counter pressure will help, and I'm just gonna do that for as long as I have to do that. And I didn't really like the any kind of like outside influence. Even if I think if I had had music on and I had heard like songs pass, I would have been like, okay, so that's 3.5 minutes. Like I would have like
Okay.
I think that I would have gotten too into it. So I just had to be like zero input from the outside world. And so yeah, that's kind of how it went for me. I don't know how else to describe it because it's such a weird thing when you haven't been through it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how else to describe it other than it's just like a weird, you enter another realm of birthing
Yeah.
people.
No,
Yeah.
I get that. And what you're saying too kind of reminds me of something that we touched on before, um, how, you had this expectation that you'd be moving, that you'd be listening to stuff. And really what you found helpful, it sounds like, is maybe laying or being a specific movement and just really focusing on inside. Because
Mhm.
I've worked with a couple of folks who've mentioned, oh, I was disappointed that I didn't listen to like my birthing playlist. Or I had one mom in particular who was really upset that she never got in the tub. And I was like, you didn't need it,
Right.
and it's kind of interesting to see like what you were drawn to in that moment.
Yeah, yeah. And it's really like um when we were like going to our doctor's appointments and things like that before, when we'd go to the hospital, I'd be like, well, when I'm in labor, don't pull up to valet. Like, let's just park in the garage and we don't want to stall labor. Like, stalling labor was a huge thing that I'd heard about where everybody's like, change positions. You don't want to stall labor. Walk around. You don't want to stall labor. Like, I was doing the opposite of all of that. I was like, if I'm on my left side in the tub, I'm not rolling to my right side. Like I'm not moving. I'm in a cocoon. Um, and I had really prepared for like, I'm going to be walking the hallways. Like I'm going to be doing all this stuff. Like I don't want to be hooked up to an IV because I want freedom to move around. And like I could have been hooked up to an MRI machine. Like I was motionless. So, it's so interesting how you think it's going to go versus how it goes. But still, it was like that, like exactly like you said, like that's just what I needed. That was what worked. And it wasn't stalling labor. I could feel that labor was very much not stalling. It was active. It was moving forward. I could feel the baby moving down. Everybody was confirming the baby was moving down. I had the monitors on, so periodically the nurse would come in when they would like lose the heartbeat to move the monitor down because the baby was moving down. So that was kind of an indication that like we were headed in the right direction. But even then I was like, I don't need this monitor on. It was really kind of I just felt that my body was doing what it needed to be doing, and then the baby was doing the work that he needed to be doing. And um I did what I needed to do, which was absolutely nothing, which was deep breathing, and that's it.
Yeah,
So,
I love that.
yeah.
And, it makes me kind of curious too. I I think I noticed that some people, maybe when they are a little bit more on alert or nervous, they tend to be needing to do something like movement or have that music playing or whatnot.
Mhm.
Is there anything that you noticed that was helping you stay so calm? Because I find that a lot of people who are relaxed and calm don't don't necessarily want to or need to be moving as much as maybe you had anticipated that you would be.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. I had an amazing doula. And I had my husband. So I had people that I trusted and that I felt supported by there. Um, I think maybe if I had been completely alone, I wouldn't have been quite so calm because it would have been like more, I don't know. But it was like constant kind of reassurance from my doula that like, yep, this is everything's going well. And so then it would be like a recheck in my brain to be like, yep, I'm doing the right thing. Where if I hadn't had kind of maybe a regular check-in, I would have thought like, is this going well? Am I doing the right thing? So I think just having like words of affirmation, not like overbearing, but periodically just help me kind of reset and be like, okay, I'm confirming to myself then that this is correct. Um, I had my own like little internal mantras, and even though I wasn't like communicating anything out with my husband or my doula or anything, my internal monologue was very much like, any woman can do this. This is manageable. I'm getting through it. And so I think that it was just having like positive affirmations for mantras, and then getting that like periodically from an external source that I trusted as well, um, really kind of just helped me stay in it and stay calm.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense too. And something I'm going to jump back to something that you were saying earlier about well, two things in mind. You know, just having that comfort and that reassurance. I find that a lot of folks will tell me later on as a doula that, "Oh, yeah, and I was looking to you and your face was just, smiley, regular, relaxed, whatever it might be." And so even that kinda, like, silent reassurance of no one's fidgeting with me or no one's, looks like they're stressed can be helpful.
Mhm. Yes.
But I was also curious on something that you had said or mentioned earlier about the counter pressure. And I think what you had written about was that it felt like a cheat code for you. Can you just, maybe describe that a little bit more?
Yeah, I had, I think, 12 hours of exclusively back labor. And I have heard from, birth professionals, friends, people that had back labor that were like, it was the worst. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. Like, back labor was so bad. I loved back labor. And I think that people don't hear that often. So I don't want anybody that is listening to this to be afraid of back labor because I thought it was so great. They we had prepared for like, they described contractions as like starting in the back and kind of wrapping around, and at the very end that was accurate, but for all of just like my active labor until I was like really pushing, it was just my low back. Like it just radiated in my low back, and counter pressure, if I could breathe through the beginning of it, got counter pressure in the middle, and then breathe through the end of it, it was so manageable. I think that if it had been contractions just in the front, I don't think like my doula and my husband could have just like counter pressured my stomach the way that you can with your back. And so I was like, oh, this is great. Just keep it in my back. I've got the routine. Counter pressure is a cheat code. And it really was like a painkiller. It was so amazing, the counter pressure. I don't know the science behind it. I don't need to know. I just know that it worked. So counter pressure and deep breathing were everything. But back labor is not as scary as everybody says, as long as you have a supportive team that is happy to push on your back for 12 to 13 hours.
I definitely have had one person who she's like, take your thumbs and just press as hard into my back. She's like, leave a mark in me. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do that intense,
Yeah.
but I am going to, squeeze my hardest for that.
Yep.
And I'm curious too, you had mentioned in your story about using the TENS machine. And I'm curious, could you just maybe share a little bit more detail about what people might be able to read about?
Yeah, the The TENS machine I got just like on Amazon for really cheap because I was like, I've heard great things about it. We'll try it in labor. I also am like a runner and I'm like, if we don't use it during labor, maybe I'll use it for like a knee injury later on. Who knows? So I got a TENS machine and my doula suggested, I think it was probably before I got in the bath, maybe. Do you want to try the TENS machine and just see? And I was like, yeah, for sure. Let's try it. And it worked, but I think what it did was like it just migrated my contractions from my back to my front. And so then I could feel like the buzzing of the TENS machine on my back, and then I could feel the contraction in the front. And I was like, no, I don't want this. We did like a couple contractions with it, and I was like, I don't think that this is how I want to proceed. Because I was like in my routine at that point, and so I was like, let's not shake this up. So I think it could be a good tool, but I think I had established what was working for me, and so it kind of threw a wrench in that. And I was like, nope, we tried it, move on.
Yeah, you didn't need it. And like you were saying too, you preferred the sensation in your back because the counter pressure was doing
Yes.
essentially what people want the TENS machine to be doing,
Yes.
distraction, feeling good, taking away some sensation.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, something that we had discussed earlier on, and I don't think was brought up when you were discussing the high level overview of your story, but could you talk about there were two other sensations that you mentioned that I thought were just so helpful when I was reading your story about like the pushing phase. You had mentioned that it felt a little bit like a gut punch or, some diarrhea. And I think
Yes.
everyone has probably experienced diarrhea at some point in their life, and that is
Yes.
a really great way of describing that feeling because that isn't as, I mean, no one loves it, but it's not as scary as, the thought of pushing your baby out or whatever that could
Yeah.
feel like.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's a really good point where it's like, you know what diarrhea feels like. It doesn't feel great, but it's not like this like scary, is this going to be traumatic, kind of a thing. It's just like, and it's the same kind of mindset where it's like, whatever is in me is coming out as it should. Like whatever is in my body needs to come out, and my body is doing what it should to get it out. And it's the same feeling of, I described it as like a gut punch because it's like the like during the pushing phase, like my body was doing the pushing, and it was like knocking the wind out of you, like diarrhea contractions. And that's what it feels like, is it's like you just have to kind of let it happen and know that it's your body doing what it should to get the baby out. And that's exactly what it feels like. And it's like not the most fun you've ever had. Like you wouldn't sign up to be like, I would love diarrhea this evening, but like if you're like, I'm gonna feel better, I'm gonna have a baby afterwards, sure. And it's not any scarier than that. So, yeah, I think that it's a helpful analogy because it is accurate to what it feels like, and it's positive and productive and not scary. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And the way that you're saying it too, it's so similar. A lot of people in class or doula clients or just random folks will ask, how do I know when to push and like what is it going to feel like? And I think you kind of answered both of those because how do I know? Oh, my body knows. Like I don't have to think about it, just
Mhm.
like you don't have to think about having a bowel movement or having diarrhea. Your body's just like you need to get to the toilet now.
Yes.
And with that same breathing, like, yes, we practice breathing techniques that can help, but a lot of it, all of a sudden, you just go, oh, okay, it's happening.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
it just kind of takes over for you. And maybe you can remind yourself, oh, it's going to be helpful if I like fog up a mirror or try some other tools.
Mhm.
But at the same point, especially when you don't have an epidural or other medication, it's just going to happen for you.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there was a there was definitely a shift where it was like I went from these are contractions to like my body is starting to push. Like my and it was after my water had broken, it was like the baby had moved down far. Like it clearly my body knew like we've done all the work, you are dilated, you are ready, the water has broken, the baby is there. And like we're gonna get into the pushing phase of this. And so it wasn't me being like, I'm gonna start pushing now. Like it was just my body and then me communicating to like my doula and the nurses and the team, like I feel like I need to push. Like this is imminent. And then that feeling just gets stronger and stronger until you're like really actively doing it. But yeah, even there was a couple times when the nurses tried to like count to 10 during the pushing, like you see in the movies where it's like one, two, and it's like counting, but the counting wasn't aligning with my body doing the pushing. And so it wasn't helpful. I told them to stop because sometimes I would still be having the contraction when we went to 10, or I would feel like I still needed to be pushing. So I would just keep going. And then they were like, oh, I guess she's still going. And I was like, you could just stop the commentary, stop the counting. I know what to do. I'm going to do it. Um, and I, it's like, I guess roughly 10 seconds, like a long 10 seconds, but I didn't need the counting to know is the point I'm trying to get at. It's like I just did it as my body did it. And sometimes it was longer than 10 and sometimes it was shorter, but I just let it happen. And there wasn't really a defining moment where I was like, oh, somebody tell me that I should be pushing now or anything like that. It was really just like my body doing it. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And something that I think I've always described in class too is that nature, your uterus, it's not, I mean, it is perfect, but it's also not perfect in the fact that the rhythm, you might still be getting these contractions, or some people call them like waves or surges every 2 minutes, but some of them might be about 30 seconds and others might be 45. I'm going to
Mhm.
say up to about a minute and a half. And so you kind of have that rise, and maybe the nurse says, start pushing now, but you don't feel the urge to push until it gets a little bit higher or tighter,
Mhm.
whatever you want to describe it there. So I appreciate you mentioning that because um, we love the support that nurses can give. And sometimes it's like, it's just not aligning with what's internal. And you can't, in that moment, you being like, actually, can you wait 5 seconds? Because it's about to be stronger, you
Yeah,
can't communicate that in the moment. So.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Well, I'm curious, is there anything right now that you feel like you also really want to share about your story, or uh specific advice that you'd give to any families, particularly first time, but even families who, it's their second or third baby and they want to try something different, or yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think let me think. I don't just be prepared for whatever. I feel like we took so many classes. We did all the prep we could. We had a birth plan that we were still like, things can change. It's whatever. And even though I had a birth that I am like very happy with and like wasn't traumatic and was relatively easy compared to people that are in labor for like days and days. Um, it was not what my plan had looked like. And so I think just like be prepared for anything. Now that I've been through it once, I feel like slightly more prepared. But I know that with the second, I'm like, who knows? It could be totally different. I could be like, I hate back labor. This is awful. Like, this isn't how it was the first time. So I think just like trusting your body, going with the flow, knowing that whatever needs to happen is happening. Um, and if you've never gone unmedicated before and like that's your goal this time or something, I told everybody it was like a hard like yoga class or like a hard Pilates class. Like I think of it like that because you just like are holding a pose that you have to breathe through, and it's not like again where it's like I don't know if I would sign up to do like 13 hours of hard yoga, but I can, like it's doable, like you're working. But it's not like this was the most like traumatic, excruciating, like horrible thing that I've ever been through. It was just like a hard yoga class for a lot of hours. And so I think that's how I try to describe it to people that are like, I can't believe you went unmedicated. And um I think I was really fortunate that it was not that many hours. I think it was 13 hours like beginning to end. But it did not feel that long. it felt very fast and just like get a supportive team around you and trust your body.
I love
That's kind
that.
of my
And as you say it too, I'm like 13 hours is still a good amount
a
of
long
time
time. Yeah.
to be, focusedly breathing, staying as relaxed and comfortable as you can. Um, I don't know if I had brought it up in our class, but sometimes I've talked about birth being like the ultimate like mindfulness retreat, not necessarily like a silent retreat or things like that, but you have to be so focused for every time that that contraction comes on because it sounded like for you and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like getting into that breathing rhythm was one of the really helpful tools. And so every once in a while you could stumble on a contraction or maybe, your breath wasn't in that right frame or rhythm that you had. But then once you reconnect to it, you're like, okay, I'm back in
Yes.
gear. I can handle this,
Yes.
everything's going as smoothly as it can.
Yeah, I think that's definitely accurate because there's certainly times when it was like one would come on that was especially hard and it would be like ooh and like I wouldn't go right into the breathing and then I'd have to kind of self-correct and be like I know that if I breathe this is going to be easier. I know that if I like just because the breathing really did help. Like just breathing through it was also like a painkiller. Um and so when my mind would jump and be like ooh that one was particularly rough, having to self-correct and be like just breathe. It was like a mindfulness retreat. And I think like a lot of the content and like videos and things that I watched as I was preparing were women that were like, God really helped me through. And I'm not religious. And so that wasn't like really resonating with me. And then I started to get into like a panic mode where I was like, do I have to believe in like a higher power to get through this? Like, do I have to be like, have a connection with God to like have an unmedicated labor? Because all of the content I was consuming, it would like get to that point. And I was just like, oh, I don't know. And then when I was in it, I was just like, nah, I am God. Like I can do it. I'm gonna do this. Like it was you don't need a spiritual connection. Like you are in control of what's happening to your body. Like you are um your own like mindfulness coach. Like you can do it. So yeah, I think it really having it be like kind of a mindfulness retreat is a good analogy as well.
Right. And it's beautiful if you have that spirituality, but at the same point, like not everybody is there. They have different, backgrounds, histories.
Right.
I love that point that like we all can do it. It's just
Mhm.
whether we can put our like this frontal lobe kind of out of the picture and really just tune into that breathing.
Yes. Yeah. I
Like
think
I like that you used different tools to do that by turning the shades down or
mhm.
turning the clock off.
Yeah.
I had maybe one or two other questions that I'd love to ask you probably before we wrap up. One of them was something that you had mentioned before about like bodily fluids and more blood. Could you just kind of, it sounded like it was a little bit more of a surprise or shock to you, just all of those bodily functions. I think you had experienced maybe some vomiting at some point too. So could
Mhm.
you just touch on that and what that was like for you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think anything to hopefully be like this is normal for anybody that's like is this normal? I like very early labor like within the first 2 or 3 hours I had been throwing up kind of a lot and I knew that that was a sign of labor and so I knew that that was normal. Um I also threw up like right at the end during the pushing phase. And I think that was honestly more of a like my body was just pushing so hard that I like threw up. But like that's normal, that's fine. What kind of threw me was that I started bleeding like a little bit at home and then really like once we got to the hospital I was like oh I'm bleeding like a lot like this is a lot of like bright red blood and I don't know if this is normal. I was also early so I was like is something bad happening versus like am I just in labor.
Early as in like 36 weeks compared to
Yes.
later.
And
Okay.
so I was like, oh no, like the baby's coming early and there's like a lot of blood. Like, I don't know if this is normal. And like nurses were completely unfazed. They were just like, nobody said anything about it. And I was like, I don't know. I watched like a lot of birth videos and it didn't seem to be like quite this much blood. And I felt a lot of like gushing fluids. Like I felt my water break and then after that, like I would feel a contraction. It would just be like a big gush where I think it was probably like my water breaking like little by little, like a water escaping. Um, but it was just like a lot of fluids and a lot of blood. And I was totally fine. It's not like I had a hemorrhage. It's not like anything was like wrong with the placenta or the baby or anything like that. It was just a lot. Where after I caught the baby, like my hands were pretty bloody, and then I like leaned forward onto the bed, and there's just like in all the photos like a big bloody handprint that's like Saruman, like a like on the bed, and my doula got a picture of me like kneeling on the bed, and just like I'm kneeling in like a puddle of blood. Like there was a lot. And at no point was anybody concerned or worried, or like my blood pressure didn't drop. Like it was totally fine. There's just like a lot of blood in your body, and giving birth can involve a lot of fluids and a lot of like gushing, and that's fine. So I wish that I had known that and been like a little less concerned. Because obviously I knew like the baby's gonna be like covered in, vernix and blood and everything when it comes out, but it was like a lot of blood surrounding that that wasn't just involved in the baby coming out.
Right.
So
Which is intimidating to see. You're like, what just happened? What just came out of me?
yeah, it was a lot. So, yeah, I think I just don't want anybody to be worried about it because I was totally fine.
Yeah. And that's something too, of course, your medical professional will take care of you, whatever the case is, but generally like 400 to 600 milliliters is considered normal for a vaginal birth to see that blood. And that's half a liter, a little bit more than half a liter. Like that's a significant amount, especially when it's coming out at different points. And
Mhm.
that's talking about blood like right at the moment of birth, not necessarily what's trickling out, what's mixed with amniotic fluid throughout labor. And
Yep.
so more recently, after not necessarily hearing your story, but hearing some other people, I've kind of adapted to talking about birth almost like a giant period because yes, your uterine lining, it's not shedding, but like it's starting to. And so there's some things that kind of look clotted or very mucusy, but also deep, deep red, red,
Mhm.
purple, bright red, uh,
Yes.
which I have an experience with one dad who the mom stood up and she just had a tiny bit kind of coming down her thigh. And he's like, someone call the nurse, call 911. And I'm like, okay, we're in the hospital. We don't have to call 911.
Yeah.
But it was so normal to see that amount, but it can be really shocking and surprising for anyone who maybe wasn't expecting it or just didn't expect that much of it too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of, and like my husband was very hands-on. He was like wiping things as they came out and stuff. And so I think a lot of like when you're watching birth videos, there's usually a team there that's like helping keep things relatively clean. And it's not because it's not happening. It's just because, it's not all on display. So when you feel it happening to you and you're like, I feel like I've had 13 large periods, it's normal.
Yeah, yeah. And I like that you mentioned that too, because in a birth video, if you watch it, it's maybe 3 to 7 minutes long. And so it's just clips and not everybody wants to include the video of someone, wiping them for themselves or
Yes.
yeah, cleaning up some of those messes. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you mentioning that too.
Yeah.
I guess if we maybe just like wrapping up, if there are any loose ends that you'd like to share about your story or advice that you have for other families and in the moment or preparing, I'd love to open up that space for you.
Yeah. I think just like the biggest things that helped me, I think, were taking a lot of classes and like preparing before. Just understanding like what was happening in my body was helpful. I learned so much about like my own anatomy that I've had this body for a lot of years. I would have thought that I like knew what a cervix looked like or when it dilated, what that was like, that I just really didn't know. So I think just having as much information as you can really helped, because then I kind of had a visual, like a mental picture of what was happening. Um, if I could change anything, I would have gotten a postpartum doula, I think. So if that's accessible for you, I would recommend it. Um, just the same kind of energy that I had in labor, having somebody be like, this is normal, this is fine. If I had had that postpartum, just like another set of hands to be like, this is okay, you've got a team here supporting you. Because we didn't have a lot of like family support or anything postpartum. I think it would have been really helpful. Um, and like you're going through a major change and a lot of physical things happening afterwards. And so I think that that support would have been great. But yeah, I think just prepare as much as you can, have as many resources as you can, and trust your body and have the birth that you're supposed to have.
I love it.
Yeah.
Simple, sweet, to the point. Well, I
Yes.
appreciate that, and, we wish everybody, a very smooth and happy, healthy labor in the future.
Yeah.